dearest, gentle reader, we're so back. I don't know about you, but a Bridgerton release hasn't felt this fun to me in a while. As a matter of fact, maybe they've never been fun for me. All-consuming at best, but here I am, ready to report that I had a blast with season 4. And word on the street is I'm not alone. People have their criticisms, as do I, and some are determined always to despise the very show they're obsessed with, but I'm overall under the impression that this season was met with a warmer reception than the last. I, too, had my gripes with the execution of season 3, but even in comparison to 1 or 2, I find 4 goes down easy. I mean, Simon and Daphne's last few episodes were obviously controversial, and a lot of upset was caused by adaptational changes made to dramatize Kate and Antony's story. Much more of Sophie and Benedict's book, An Offer from a Gentleman, made it out alive. Great news for yours truly, who's on record calling it my second favorite in the series. And how little it stood to be altered sort of exemplifies why. We've been over this, but the Bridgerton novels have a problematic streak that's inevitably bled its way into the Netflix version. Even so, the show has done, and I'm sure will continue to do, a lot in service of circumventing the original's more misogynistic or violent tendencies. In the case of Benedict Bridgerton, that primarily constitutes an attitude adjustment. His on-screen counterpart is quicker to take no for an answer when Sophie refuses to be his mistress, where in the book he's more annoying about it, to say the least. Point being, that's a non-intrusive change to make, not one likely to spark outrage. Mark that down as my first theory as to why season 4 was welcomed with open arms. Another is that among the many romantic tropes explored by Bridgerton, Cinderella stories have got to be one of the most popular. That's why they keep making them, as we well know on this channel. The template of Cinderella also favors external conflict over internal, which I imagine makes likability an easier bar to clear. The obstacle Sophie and Benedict face isn't deceit, denial, or much of any misbehavior on either of their parts. It's society holding them back. I recall saying in my first ever video about Bridgerton that I didn't see how a fairy tale redux would fit into the show, but you know what? I take it back. I've changed my mind. Cinderella is ubiquitous to the point of being comparable to the other cliched romantic premises taken on by this franchise. I don't know why it bothered me so much initially that there were no other direct retellings within the series, but I've gotten over it. Some have said that the Viscount Who Loved Me takes after The Taming of the Shrew. I've also heard that To Sir Philip with Love is supposed to be like Beauty and the Beast. There are parallels in both cases, but there's a difference between that and like being based on source material. An Offer from a Gentleman is clearly based in Cinderella. That's different. It's okay that it's different, but it is, and not everyone's acknowledging that difference. I choose to. Anyway, my third theory in regards to season 4's approval rating is that the new showrunner, Jess Brunel, who took over last time around, front-loaded a lot of the big changes she wanted to make, meaning some of that storm has passed. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll ever hear the end of people complaining about Michael being adopted into Michaela, but that train left the station 2 years ago now. The uproar has quieted into an irrelevant murmur that anyone should be embarrassed for taking part in. This is also the first season that the audience came into familiar with Hannah Dodd as Francesca. We came in knowing Marcus. We came in knowing the Mondriches would be members of the Ton. It was a recipe for a more relaxed watch. Mind you, I'm not being analytical about any of this to discount the simple facts that Sophie and Benedict are charming characters played by talented actors. I, for one, enjoyed the way their story was executed. In many ways, it's entirely unsurprising that they came out of their season as a fan favorite pairing. And on top of them, I would say subplots haven't hit this hard since Simon and Daphne's go around. Both in their independent quality and in their correlation to the focal romance. We see the leads interact with a wider variety of supporting characters. We see the actions those characters take ultimately impact the main plot. Dark events unfold, which infuse the universe with higher stakes than we've felt in a while. I'm a fan, basically, and I hope I'm not the only one who's noticing more positivity, because there's definitely a chance I just wasn't served all of the drama for once. It wasn't until the second half dropped that any complaints hit my algorithms, and even then, I'm not sure I bought it. One hot topic I've noticed, for instance, is whether or not it was disrespectful of Penelope to ask Francesca if she could see herself marrying again. Remember when the debate was about Penelope anonymously exposing and profiting off of the Ton's secrets? Oh, how the mighty have fallen. This is so much stupider. Is your heart truly in this conversation, or is it that you've made a habit out of collecting evidence against your least favorite characters? Give it a rest, babe. War is over. On a personal level, if you've watched my latest videos, you might know my life has changed a lot in the years since season 3. I'm employed now, mainly, which has given me less time to fall down the Bridgerton rabbit hole, and I'm grateful for that. For those asking, my job is also one reason why I won't be updating my screen time stats, on top of thinking that my point in all of that has been made clear multiple times over. I've also been trying out more unscripted content as of late. This intro has been the first thing I've written for YouTube in a long time, and I missed it. I had fun. I wanted to lay out my overall thoughts. Those thoughts being that Sophie and Benedict's season was a breath of fresh air. With that opinion established, I'd like to spend the rest of this video speaking straight from the dome about individual storylines. Okay, so initially I was a bit put out by the Lady Danbury of it all, because I thought she wanted to return to her homeland mainly to be written off of the show, but it sounds like she's back for season 5. And because of that, I love this storyline. I was so much more touched by it in the end than I expected to be, probably because the scene where Queen Charlotte lets Lady Danbury go, in a way, was done so beautifully. I love that it was unspoken. And I am excited to see how this might mix up their roles going forward, because so much of what we have seen them do is the song and dance they've always done. I think this subplot also helps exemplify why I felt there was more interconnective tissue between the storylines on this season, because theoretically it could have just stood on its own. We could have just seen Sophie and Benedict do their thing in some scenes and seen Queen Charlotte and Lady Danbury do their thing in other scenes. There didn't have to be any overlap here. They didn't have to connect at all. But ultimately, it is because Agatha wants to take a step back that she introduces Alice to Charlotte, and Alice is able to conjure up a plan to help Benedict and Sophie. It's kind of hard to imagine season 2 or 3 doing something like that, having storylines connect, not directly, but through multiple steps. I believe when I speculated about what would become of Sophie and Benedict in my previous Bridgerton videos, I was pretty spot on about how they would resolve the class issue, which is to say that Charlotte would just decide it was fine. What I wasn't sure about was whether she would solve classism or just make an exception for Sophie, and they obviously went with the exception route, which was definitely easier to write and more believable. But I do think one of the few shortcomings of this season for me is this feeling like Sophie had a birthright and that's why she gets to be the exception, and all of the other servants that we have gotten to know throughout this season will just fade back into obscurity where they belong. I cannot put that all on Bridgerton though, because I talked about this in my Cinderella video. It is just kind of a universal problem for that story, that Cinderella makes it out and all of the other servants who help her don't. And as far as Bridgerton is concerned, even outside of matters of class, this is what Queen Charlotte does. I've talked about this before. Her role in the mainline series is to fix the societal problem at the end. Oh no, your union has caused some sort of upset. There is controversy in the Ton. Your reputations are at risk. But I say it's okay. Anyway, something I'm curious about is if, even though Agatha will be returning for season 5, if she will arrive late to the scene because she was traveling her homeland, wherever that is. When I was looking up whether or not she would return for the next season, it was said that she would have a major role in season 5. I don't think it's been 100% confirmed who the next season will follow, but it is either Eloise or Francesca. Either way, Lady Danbury does not play a major role in either of those books, nor did she many of the novels, so obviously they've found ways to fit her in. But I also feel like even if she didn't play a major role, they would just like say that. What I would like to see is some more Lady Danbury and Hyacinth content, because we seem to be getting more Hyacinth content and they are tight in the books. That is one of my favorite relationships in the books. I hope they do it in the show too. It's like one of the only things that I really care about from the books making it into the show. Moving on. One of my favorite moments of dialogue in the whole season was when Benedict said, very casually, "Alice at the palace."
She's at the palace. Alice at the palace. Very well.
Oh, it's delighting me just to think about it. Beyond that, Alice's storyline was one of my favorites this season. I talked about this in more detail in my review of season 3, but I do not like the tone with which people speak about the mondriches and how they are like irrelevant and unnecessary, but that doesn't mean there's not some truth to the more nuanced version of that criticism, which is that they are not integrated into the story well, primarily in that even though they are friendly with the Bridgertons, their storyline since season 1 hasn't really had anything to do with the main plot. That can't be said this time around. Alice plays a pivotal role in advocating for Sophie and Benedict. I also love that the class solidarity in that goes acknowledged.
You and I, we were given this life out of thin air. If I involve myself in trying to help this maid, either it will finally earn me the Queen's close confidence, or it will ruin this family. I should like to do it either way.
I just mentioned feeling a bit disappointed by the idea that Sophie is the only one of the maids we met who will get to rise above her station. But looking at the grand history of the show, the Mondriches have also risen in the ranks. So it was nice to hear Alice acknowledge that and think through that being her reasoning for helping Sophie. Not to mention the cuteness of that scene where she tells Will that she wants to help Sophie. That little boxing thing they do, it was so cute. I loved it. From here on out, I'm interested to see what else she'll get up to as a lady's maid. I think this is a good spot for her. One of the very first things that really thrilled me about this season was realizing that we were going to get an inside look at what's going on downstairs with the maids in the servant quarters. But probably my favorite thing to come out of the Maid Wars was our little dive into Mrs. Varley's and Portia's relationship. For one thing, I'm glad that they found something for Portia to do that felt relevant to the season, because she is such an interesting character, and even if we won't be seeing as much of her past Penelope's season, I like that she hasn't just disappeared. But also because I know through keeping track of screen time that Mrs. Varley has been the most present maid. She has gotten involved in the Featheringtons' affairs. She has done dirty work for Portia. So it was also nice to see her demand appreciation and ultimately get it. And the mere fact that class was at the thematic forefront of this season allowed for storylines like these to feel relevant, like you weren't just doing random stuff. Weird compliment, I also think that the Maid Wars allowed for Lady Whistledown's best writing this season. And I don't even mean because Penelope is out in the open now. We will get to that. I think across the whole series, Maid Wars made for like fun narration, and it helped color the whole ton. I guess it was just refreshing to me that the ton was talking about something other than the marriage mark, other than like which Bridgerton is getting married next. I am pro Maid Wars, and I hope that we do see more glimpses of the servant class in future seasons. Maybe not as many, But like, now you can do more Mrs. Wilson storylines. Like, I feel like she was brought to the forefront more, you know? You guys, Hyacinth fan club party. If you haven't watched my other Bridgerton videos, which would be weird, you should know I'm Hyacinth's #1 fan, and it's so exciting to me that she seems to be more present than ever. She had like more screen time than ever this season. Not so much Gregory, but you know, someday. He was still pretty much operating the way both he and Hyacinth used to, where, you know, he showed up every once in a while to do a little quip, but Hyacinth had more of a storyline this season, and I was so happy to see it. Both in the books and in the show, that girl is just my fave. They're kind of different, but in both iterations, my fave. In the books, Hyacinth is described as being the most outspoken Bridgerton sister, so more like Eloise, I would say, in the show, who in the books is described as like second most obstinate after Hyacinth. I like that the show is less so ranking them by their outspokenness and more so using them as foils for each other. Now, I suppose you could say they're both equally loudmouthed, but in different ways and about different things. Hyacinth is optimistic, she's overeager, she's traditional, she's girly, and we all know Eloise, she's opinionated, she's non-traditional. Pairing them this season was, in my eyes, a great idea that really paid off, especially because this is still not a storyline entirely irrelevant to the main plot, seeing as Sophie becomes their lady's maid. Seeing them learn from each other, seeing a previously less present Bridgerton sibling relationship blossom is great, good stuff. While we're on the topic of Eloise, I won't be recording a whole section about Cressida because they didn't do that much with her, but I did appreciate seeing her and Eloise reconnect, however slightly. I liked seeing her and Penelope send a nod to each other as well. Last season, I feel like I might have said I would have liked to see more for Cressida, but knowing that her life sort of turned out okay is enough. I also think if you did too much to repair her and Eloise's friendship or like do a whole storyline with her and Penelope, none of that would feel very relevant. And I do think the relevance of everything is one of the great strengths of this season. Like, even when Eloise is at Cressida's, that is to aid Sophie in exploring her house. It's all interlinked. Anyway, we don't technically know if Eloise is going to be the Bridgerton lead of season 5, but I think that would be my preference over Francesca. That's mostly because I think some breathing room between John's death and Francesca moving on with his cousin would be like good, but that's also because less so than when it comes to Francesca, the show is running out of stuff for Eloise to do. It happened to really work for me that they paired her with Hyacinth this season, but I do overall get the sense from Eloise that we're just like kicking her around. Like, there's not much of a point to what she's doing because we all know where she's at and where she's been, what her politics are. And it only becomes less believable that Eloise will ever marry the more seasons in a row we see of her being like, no, I will not marry. And as far as what I would like to see from her season, I don't know. I did see Jess Burnell confirm that they intend for her to end up with her book love interest, which would be Sir Philip, who has been in the show, who is married to Marina. I also doubt we will see Marina again because her actress is unlikely to return, which makes it hard to pull off any story besides her death. Not that that would be easy to pull off even if you had her around. Like, could she run away? I said they should have her do that once, but like, do women run away in Regency London? I don't think they can. Like, what is she gonna go live off the land? Where would she go? I think she's gonna die. And the thing is, it's not like I'm opposed to any character dying ever. We just saw John die, and sad as it is, I think they handled it really well. I like the way he was grieved, the way he was spoken about, and the way he was portrayed before his death. If Marina dies off screen, mind you, a character who was instrumental to season 1, who we all know, will there be a funeral episode? Will characters say kind words about her? Will we buy them? Will we think fondly of the life she lived, or just see her as a tragic figure? It's hard to picture myself being satisfied by whatever they do with the Marina of it all. Yet still, I'm confident that I will prefer whatever is done to what was done in the books. Looking past Marina, you might know I'm a Philip hater when it comes to the books. I do not like that man, and I hate everything about his and Eloise's relationship, but his on-screen counterpart is obviously thus far a different guy. It's just kind of hard to imagine Eloise with anyone because they have chosen to make it so integral to her character that she does not believe in marriage. Have they set the stage now for her to change her mind about that? Maybe. I see a lot of people in their fight against gay Francesca say that it should have been Eloise. The first thing that's annoying about that take to me is that it operates under the assumption that only one Bridgerton lady could be a lesbian. Like, you're mad enough about Michaela, but they could have done that and Eloise. Then how would you feel? The second thing is that I don't think it's fair to assume any female character who is written to be opposed to marriage is like doing so because they're attracted to women. For the record, part of me did ship her and Cressida last season, and if you headcanon Eloise as sapphic for the love of the game, then like that's cool. But if you're trying to argue like which Bridgerton sibling should have been queer, then I almost feel like you're scapegoating Eloise just because she's opposed to marriage. But the way I see it, she's opposed to marriage for feminist reasons. It is not that she is unattracted to men. It is that she sees the marriage mart, she sees dowries, she sees the patriarchy of it all, and she sees that the value women hold in this society is the marriages they are able to attain. That is a political stance, not a sexuality. So I'm fine with her ending up with a man. What I need them to do a good job of is explaining how she is able to hold this political ideology while allowing herself to love. I'm getting carried away. On to the next. Okay, so I feel rather neutrally about what was done with Penelope this season, and I think it would be generous to say anything was done with Colin this season. I mean, I like that they had a carriage scene. It's nice that they stand in the background of scenes together, but like the only one with a storyline was Penelope, and that storyline was letting go of Lady Whistledown. Maybe it would have been too much to shove into last season, but it does sort of make me feel like they should have just had her let it go then, because now it feels like a weird like tampering off. There were still parts of the storyline I appreciated, though. I really loved that moment where she looked in the mirror and saw her old self. I liked seeing people confront her about what she'd written. I liked seeing her sort of lose her interest in the column now that she is under the Queen's eye. It felt like maybe doing it in this season gave them more of an opportunity to spell out why she's giving it up. And like I said, that could have been too much to fit into the previous season. The timing of it is just a little strange. Like, finale last season, she's aiming her quill more responsibly. It's this big deal, and now she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's fine. She's still a writer, you know? It's like somewhat melancholic to me that she's like giving up this thing she worked so hard for, but like she is still writing. Oh, I'm not sure how I feel about there being a new Lady Whistledown. I like that the narrator won't be going away, and I do think that was kind of necessary for the show. I think it's also fun that there'll now be another mystery about like who the new one is. It does just put us in a predicament that we had just gotten out of, where like now a new character is going to be hated for being Lady Whistledown, and they've also put themselves in the position of having to figure out like who that is, and I don't know if they already know. And now we're in like that Gossip Girl, How I Met Your Mother problem. I don't know if you should know or shouldn't know how this is all going to end up, but like there's a chance we get to the finale of this whole series and everyone's like pissed off about who Lady Whistledown is. I've seen a lot of theories as to who it could be floating around. I don't even really want to theorize. I will say Hyacinth is one name I've seen thrown out, and while like Something about that does feel in character. I don't want it to be Hyacinth because I love her book so much that I don't want to see it be like the subject of a lot of controversy the way that Colin and Penelope's season was. Like, I just want her season to be nice. And I want everyone to like it. It would probably be the most fun to me if Lady Whistledown was a maid now. Like, we get to the end of the series and it's Footman John. That's fun. I don't think it causes a bunch of drama and we're all like, oh my gosh, it was John, you know? The longer this video goes on, the more I feel myself slipping. I already really liked the way Kate and Anthony were utilized in season 3, but now I appreciate it a lot more because I didn't love what they did with them here. I think the timeline of it all has just finally gotten to me. Like, where are they? And when are they coming back? And when do they go? And why are they back here and then they're not back again? And why are they at this event and not that event? And I understand why. I think it's nice of him that Jonathan comes back to Bridgerton at all. I just wish they like wrote around that in a way that felt more natural. Even if it meant that they literally lived at home and they were like, Anthony's in the other room. Edmund's cute. Big fan of the baby. But the timeline isn't even the only thing that upsets me. I do not like what they did with Anthony and Benedict, only because there was no real resolution to it. So like, I think it's in character for Anthony to boss Benedict around. I also think it serves a purpose in adding to the stakes of Benedict and Sophie's union. If you want me as an audience member to believe that Benedict would have to give up his family to be with this woman, then at least somebody in his family has to like vehemently oppose it in a way that only Anthony really can because of his characterization. So like, that's all fine with me, but why do we not see him again until the wedding? Like, just why nothing? Why nothing? And I think it particularly upsets me because I still feel unresolved about the conflict Benedict and Anthony had about the art class in season 2 that they dropped in season 2, didn't pick up in season 3, and I thought they might bring up this season because it was Benedict's season, and they did not. Maybe later. There's always time. I'm afraid I do not have much to say about these two, and that isn't Violet's fault, it's Marcus's. And I really truly don't have anything against him, I just find him like deeply uninteresting. Last season I said that was because he felt like a character edited out of the prequel and placed into the wrong season. I still feel that way, but now being in the wrong season can't take the blame. I just don't think I vibe with their connection. They find each other attractive, now they like to get freaky. That's all I know about them and all I've ever known about them. Like, his more interesting relationship was to his sister last season, but with Violet, there's just nothing of substance going on there, which is why I'm really glad that it seems to have ended. And I'm kind of glad she's not remarrying him too, not because I don't think she could ever, just fully because I'm like, this is not your guy. This is a guy that you hooked up with for a while. Like, this isn't your husband. This isn't your second husband. No offense, Marcus. That's just how I feel. Props to Violet's little like 90s though. Cute. OMG, where to begin? I do not want to spend more time defending Michaela's like mere existence. I feel like that took precedence over my section about them in my last Bridgerton video. So I was less able just to talk about how I felt about the execution of everything because I was too busy being like, what are you psychos worried about? So I must admit that despite the fact that I was always into the idea of Francesca's story being maid sapphic, I did sort of wonder if they introduced Michaela a little too early or just a little too offhandedly. I still don't think, based on the way their dynamic played out throughout this season, that brief moment of them meeting in season 3 was super in character or necessary. The main thing is I think they just had Francesca react too immediately to Michaela. I know that you know they're going to end up together, so you want to like start early, but that's just not how their story goes. They don't know it's going in that direction yet. It would be crazy for them to think that. Francesca especially has to be like caught off guard by the fact that she's going to start developing feelings for Michaela. And I think that's especially true of a queer storyline, because it seems to me that Michaela already knows she's lesbian. I mean, that's what I gathered from her being so opposed to being introduced to men. I did not read it as that she just didn't know why she was uninterested in marriage. I think that they didn't tell Francesca, but I think both Michaela and John know that she lay with women. But Francesca obviously doesn't know. She hasn't had her gay awakening. She does not know what she's into. So we're going to see that. I also did really like the way the dynamic between her and Michaela played out, because even knowing where they will end up someday, I bought into every step of the process. I wasn't like busy thinking in the early stages when Francesca was annoyed by Michaela that this was all secretly passion underneath, and one day this exact dynamic would lead to them being lovers. I was just in it. I was just like, Francesca, it makes sense based on your character why all of this stuff is annoying to you. And as they started repairing that relationship and getting along, I was right there with them the whole time. I was like, wait, now you're understanding each other. And I love that. I love that my mind wasn't even jumping ahead, because I just bought into all of it so much. I think these are all really good performances, and that's partially why. And like I spoke about when I was comparing his death to the potential death of Marina, I did really appreciate the reverence surrounding John. I think it was a solid send-off. I think he was a really beautifully written character, especially in comparison to John Sterling in the book. I don't really remember textually why I felt like he was written to be boring in the book, but I do remember saying that in my first Bridgerton video. He seemed like a perfectly nice husband Francesca once had, but we will not dwell on what he was like or why they were good for each other, lest this whole book become a bummer. I feel like the show did a much better job conveying what made their relationship work, even though it's so different from what will become of Francesca's relationship with Michaela, which will be likely, if it goes anything like the books, more like passionate and whatever. John, in contrast, was more of a quiet companion, somebody who complimented her, not by being so different that they balanced each other out, but by being so similar that they almost like melded into a team. But I was sad to see him go, even though I was pleased with his send-off. The gravity of this storyline, I think, also just made the whole show hit harder. It almost reminded me of how Queen Charlotte felt like it had more depth because it wasn't all happily ever afters. Sophie and Benedict get married and it's beautiful, but we know through Francesca that it doesn't always turn out the way you expect it to. Also through Violet, for that matter. And I really liked the conversation Violet and Francesca had that sort of served as Francesca's breaking point when she admitted that she felt like it wasn't the same thing because she wasn't able to offer John an heir. On that note, I would say that the show has now explored Francesca's infertility storyline. That was one of the major reasons people said you could not change Michael to Michaela, because she has a miscarriage within that marriage. But Julia Quinn did not conclude Francesca's infertility storyline in a super thoughtful way. They just like had kids in a second epilogue because she did not answer the question of whether or not they would have kids initially, not to leave it ambiguous, which might actually be thoughtful, but just because she didn't think to answer the question. So the idea that the show had to do the storyline in the exact same way the books did was always ridiculous to me, because the books did not do it well. Moving on, ostensibly, to the main plot, I just want to say that I loved all three performances of the women in Sophie's household. I should disclaim that I had this whole theory in my video about season 3 that it would be the Cowpers that Sophie worked for, and I think I had pretty good evidence to suggest that, but I want to clarify that I'm not upset that that wasn't the case. A little embarrassed that I did like a whole thing about it and then it wasn't the case, but I am actually really glad things turned out the way they did, because I thought these three characters and these three performances were just so strong. I was slightly worried about the minimal age gap between Araminta and Sophie. It is slightly bothersome to me that Araminta like shows up in Sophie's life as a child and then is like still that same age when she's an adult. But that little visual plot hole was worth it, I guess, because I think Araminta was played so well, and her demeanor actually reminded me of the stepmother in the 1950s Disney Cinderella. I just mean that they are both like actually intimidating to me, surprisingly intimidating to me. There's also the matter of Posey, who I think is a really hard type of character to pull off. I think a lot of kooky side characters who put their feet in their mouth can give Disney Channel, but she never gave Disney Channel. I really loved that performance. And what is there to say about the leads? I feel like I'm going to struggle to talk about it in detail. I just like them. I like them a lot. When I was scripting the introduction to this video, I was struggling to find a word that described what I find likable about their specific dynamic and the way they suit each other, because words that kept coming to mind felt like infantilizing. Like I wanted to call them pure and like innocent and stuff like that, that just didn't feel like entirely true either, because we know Benedict is a rake and whatnot. Sophie too, famously a thief. But it's less about their character like as individuals and more about the way they bounce off each other. And this is sort of what I was talking about when I was talking about how they don't harm each other. I like an enemies to lovers flair. I like that sort of push and pull dynamic, but we do see it a lot. I would argue that it's more common than what we see with Benedict and Sophie, which is just like being good to each other and good for each other. And that's the thing, you see them at my cottage flying a kite together and it's like, wait, this is so cute. There's not even any drama. The main drama between them that isn't just societal pressure, even if it is based in societal pressure, is Benedict asking Sophie to be his mistress. I just think though that you can see why he does it. He thinks it's the only way they can be together, and he also doesn't quite understand how offensive it will be to her based on her history, because he doesn't know her history. So I think they pull it off a lot better in the show by having him, you know, repent for this better, for lack of a better word. He learns that he did offend her, he apologizes for it, and courts her more officially, even before he knows that they will be able to like live in society still. He plans to run away with her. I could say more, but I'm honestly tired of filming and I want to stop. So I hope you'll allow it. I'll see you next season, probably. Goodbye.